I now recognize Ms. Turner for her opening statements.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Green and Ranking Member Stansbury and members of the committee. It's a privilege to be invited here to speak to you today. I started fencing at the University of Maryland College Club team 12 years ago and became competitive within the United States Fencing Association a year later. What started as a hobby quickly became a deep passion of mine. In these past 12 years, I estimate that I have spent over 7,000 hours training and over $100,000 between lessons, club dues, competition fees, equipment, and travel. I have dedicated a significant portion of my life to this sport and competition because, like thousands of other women, I love it. My favorite part of fencing is the competition, the thrill, the fight, the triumph, and even the heartache. But lately, fair, female-only competition is harder and harder to come by. USA Fencing has over 200 self-declared members who identify as transgender. Each time a man competes in the women's category, with USA Fencing's support, it removes fair sport and takes opportunities from women.
Welcome back, Patriots, to Right View Nation, the channel where we stand up for faith, freedom, and truth, no matter how inconvenient it might be to the woke mob. Today's video is not easy to film, and frankly, it shouldn't have to be filmed in the first place. But what you're about to hear is real. It's raw, it's righteous, and it's a story every American needs to know. We're talking about Stephanie Turner, an accomplished female fencer, a patriot in her own right, and a woman who had the courage to stand alone and say, "Enough is enough." She recently gave a powerful testimony about why she refused to compete against a biological male in a women's fencing competition. And folks, what she revealed was nothing short of outrageous. Stephanie has spent over a decade in fencing, over 7,000 hours of training, $100,000 of her own money, blood, sweat, and tears to fight for fair competition. She didn't ask for special treatment. She just asked to compete fairly, against other biological women. But today, even that is considered controversial. Let's get something straight, folks. This isn't about hate. This isn't about phobia. This is about basic biology and fairness, something the radical left wants to erase from the dictionary. You can identify as whatever you want on your time, but when you step into a competitive women's sports arena, you're erasing decades of progress made by real women who fought for a level playing field.
Fencing is a combat sport, a martial art of sorts. There are elements of speed, power, reaction time, distance control, footwork, and blade work, all attributes affected by sex development. It's not uncommon for a quicker, more athletic opponent to overcome the technique of another fencer. Athleticism is powerful in fencing and works in equal parts with strategy and technique. It's unbelievably demeaning to female fencers to put down the differences between men and women and any woman's loss to a man as a skill issue, or that a woman simply needs to work harder. Within the USA Fencing authoritative body, there is a culture of intimidation towards women which demands that we be silent when men enter our tournaments. A culture that includes public humiliation, doxing, social ostracism, dismissal, and even threats. I went from avoiding tournaments with known male athletes to reaching out to news outlets to get this story known. The USA Fencing, up until my protest, has been unresponsive to women's demands for fair fencing, and instead doubled down on efforts to promote male inclusion in the female category. 1 month ago, I took a knee in protest to a man competing in my category, Division 1A Women's Foil, ironically held at the University of Maryland, where my fencing career began. And the video of my protest went viral. The story of that knee began 3 years ago when I contacted Icons out of desperation for numerous men taking women's national and world titles. Leadership was not only ignoring women, but encouraging and glorifying these men. It felt like there was no place for women in USA Fencing. It took me nearly 3 years to get up the courage to come out publicly. That knee I took in protest was a cry for help and an act of desperation. The night before the tournament, I saw Redmond Sullivan's name on the registration list. I recognized his name from a Redux article as a male fencer within Wagner College's men's team, who switched to the women's NCAA team and the women's USA fencing division. I cried the whole night and again felt betrayed by USA fencing. I had already spent the money on competition fees and new equipment and spent hours training and refurbishing my equipment. And I had traveled down from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to College Park, Maryland the night before in preparation for that tournament. I felt trapped. I had been defrauded of a women's tournament and sold a lie by USA Fencing. This was hardly the first time I faced fencing a man in a women's competition. In previous instances, I would wait until the last minute to register for a tournament to see if any known men would register. If they did, I would not sign up. I missed out on numerous regional and national tournaments. I did not want to keep abandoning opportunities to advance my fencing. I had felt so isolated and strangled by USA Fencing for disagreeing with its transgender policy that I felt scared to speak openly online or with friends in the fencing community. I reached out to a church friend asking what I should do. We prayed together and asked God, if it is His will that I protest, that He pair me with Redmond in about that following day. The next morning, I found myself on the platform against him, and I stood down. Speaking out on this issue has made me a target for harassment and violence, as well as cost me friends. I have decided to step away from the sport I love, at least for now as well, because USA Fencing has fostered an environment where I am unwelcome in my own category. It is culturally acceptable to bully and shame women who speak up for other women. I should not have had to make this sacrifice. Women deserve to be treated fairly in sport. We deserve opportunities to train, compete, and win in women's category set aside for women. We deserve this at the lowest levels of sport all the way through elite Olympic competition. I hope that by taking a stand and raising awareness of the misogyny in our sport, I can help ensure other women and girls do not have to take such risks to receive the most basic protections in sports.
Thank you, Ms. Turner.
Stephanie Turner was betrayed by the very organization she trusted, USA Fencing. Rather than protect women, they threw them to the wolves in the name of inclusion. Inclusion? Inclusion for who? Because it sure isn't for the women who are now being forced to give up their trophies, their scholarships, their dreams, to compete against someone with undeniable biological advantages. This is not inclusion. This is institutional misogyny dressed up in rainbow flags. Stephanie didn't just face unfair competition. She faced doxing, threats, and harassment for speaking the truth. She was labeled a bigot, cast out, silenced. Why? Because she dared to say, women deserve their own space. She was punished for being brave enough to stand up when so many others were too afraid to. Now let me ask you this, America. What kind of country are we becoming when a woman is vilified for defending her right to fair competition? We used to celebrate strong women. Now we cancel them. Stephanie Turner took a knee, not for virtue signaling, not for TikTok clout, but as a silent protest against the destruction of women's sports. That was a cry for help. And while the woke media tried to ignore her, her message went viral anyway. Because truth, folks, has a way of breaking through the noise. She cried the night before the match. Not because she feared losing, but because she knew the system was rigged. She knew she was being forced into a lie. And still, she showed up. She stood her ground. And when the time came to fight, she refused to legitimize a farce. Let me be very clear. What Stephanie did takes guts. And it exposes a massive problem in this country. We are sacrificing the truth to appease a radical agenda. One that says women no longer matter. One that tells our daughters they need to step aside because their space now belongs to everyone. Well, here at Right View Nation, we say and no more. This is not just about fencing. This is happening in every sport. Track, swimming, wrestling, volleyball. Young women all across America are being forced to compete with individuals who were born with male bodies, male muscle mass, male bone density, and then being told it's their fault if they lose. They're told to train harder, to accept progress. You know what that sounds like? Gaslighting, psychological warfare on our young women. And all of it, folks, is being backed by spineless institutions and woke elites who would rather appease the Twitter mob than stand for common sense. Stephanie Turner is now stepping away from fencing. Not because she lost her love for it, but because the organization made her feel unwelcome in her own category. Think about that. A woman forced out of women's sports for being a woman. Where is the outrage? Where is the feminist movement that marched with pink hats and screamed for female empowerment? Silent, cowardly, or worse, complicit. Folks, this madness ends when we make it end. When we refuse to accept lies as truth. When we back women like Stephanie Turner, who put everything on the line to say what millions are too afraid to. We need to raise a new generation of strong, unapologetic women. And we need to build a country where they don't have to apologize for being women in the first place. If you're as fired up as I am, don't just sit there. Right arrow like this video. Right arrow share it with every parent, coach, and student you know. Right arrow and subscribe to Right View Nation, because we are one of the very few voices left standing up for biological truth, for fairness in women's sports, and for America's values. Stephanie Turner stood alone. She shouldn't have to. Let's make sure she knows she's not alone anymore. God bless you, Stephanie. God bless every young woman out there fighting to reclaim what's rightfully hers. And God bless America.